Hey, out there, internet land, who may be stumbling upon this review. I am back with episode 2 of movie reviews, and today I'm going to be reviewing a movie that I like very much and that I've liked ever since I was a kid. And it's a movie franchise that's a science fictional fairy tale. It is known as Star Wars. And, Star Wars has always been a big part of my childhood. And, I've already had to try. I ran into a few mishaps and stuff with this, and yeah, yeah, like I was saying, I've ran into a few mishaps and stuff. So this is like my third take of this review. Yeah, I get so excited when it comes to doing stuff that regarding Star Wars. If I have to review the movie because I've watched this movie very much. And this marks the 45th anniversary of Star Wars A New Hope. But when it first came out in 1977, it was just called Star Wars. There was no Episode 4, no A New Hope, or anything. It's like George Lucas made this, knowing that it was going to obviously make all the people excited and cheerful and high-spirited to go to the movie theater for a change. When I wasn't even alive when this movie came out. This movie came out in 1977, so this was like a whole entire 10 years before I was born. My mom graduated high school that year, and she got to see this movie in theaters, and I'm happy for her that she got to and everything. And but there was a lot of areas around the world where, even when they go to see the movie in theaters, people would be cosplaying as Darth Vader and stormtroopers already, and we only had the one movie, or they only had the one movie. I didn't even exist at this time, but I, watched a video about how it was when it was first out, and it looked it was already that popular of a franchise, even though it didn't have any sequels, prequels, or nothing. And, and it even featured Harrison Ford, and, we all knew George Lucas was directing this movie, which he directed 4 years before this, American Graffiti. And, that's a movie I've only seen, the very beginning of. I never really watched the whole movie, but it looked I don't really know exactly what it was about, but it was probably one of those similar movies to Grease and everything. That Grease, that with John Travolta, yeah, that came out a year after this. But anyway, yeah. And I didn't even know what Star Wars was, or had seen them or anything until 1997. I was 9 years old when I first saw this movie that we're about to talk about, and it wasn't even the original version of it. It was the special edition, because in 1997, George Lucas was already writing up the prequels that were going to be coming out within, the next 2 or 3 years. And, he obviously made this Star Wars trilogy remastered and everything, and with some special features, including some additional scenes and new picture format quality, and even Han doesn't even shoot first this time, all that. Because so that way it could kind of be more blended in with the prequel movies, presumably, as well as the fact that he wanted to get even me as a kid and other people like my brother and all that into the franchise finally. And it really paid off too. But yeah, even at that time, our next door neighbor who lived across the street from us had 2 of them, of the originals, and he put them on an illegal VHS tape. But we never sold it or nothing. He just made us a copy of both A New Hope and Empire. In fact, I still have the video in my bedroom as we speak. And even my VCR is not really entirely 100% accurate either, because it's one of those TV built-in VCRs. I have another VCR that I got off my aunt after my grandma passed away about a little over a year and a half ago, and I just don't have the right stuff for it to play it yet. Because apparently the AV cables and stuff, she forgot she left that stuff out. Only the AC plug is there. So I can plug it in. I just can't really hook it into a TV right now. But, yeah. Anyway, I am going to, right now, talk about Star Wars A New Hope and give you my interpretations and tell you what happened in the story and all that. Alright, the movie starts out with 20th Century Fox, Lucasfilm Limited, and a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Then the title letters Star Wars comes right there. And, yeah. Title letters Star Wars, yeah, and then you have, like, you know, back when this movie came out in 1977, it didn't even say Episode 4, A New Hope. It just went right to the dialogue, and you know, it, like, gives you a summary of the story, Flash Gordon style. I never watched Flash Gordon, but how I know Flash Gordon influenced this is because I watched Angry Video Game Nerd reviewing the Star Wars movies and even games and stuff. And he told me that, or he told everybody that watched it, the video, that Flash Gordon was the first to do that kind of thing. And, yeah. And then, I never really, see, when I watch my DVDs, I usually don't watch the intros of this part of the movies. I just go directly to the movie, and where I will start officially discussing the movie. It starts out, we see stars in the middle of space, then the camera angle lowers down and we see the top of the planet Tatooine, with Leia's blockade runner, you know, trying to get away from the Star Destroyer that's following it, and the Star Destroyer is hitting it with its laser beams and stuff from its turrets. And then all of a sudden we see our droids, C-3PO and R2-D2, the droid team that's throughout pretty much the whole franchise. And they always got each other's backs and all that, but even though they don't always agree. Then all of a sudden, you know, you hear R2-D2 squeak, and then C-3PO like asks, "Did you hear that?" And then more squeaking from R2-D2. They shut down the main reactor. We'll be destroyed for sure. This is madness. And then more and more squeaking from R2-D2. And then all of a sudden, you know, there's more of the Princess Leia's soldiers about to go up in battle against the stormtroopers. Even in Rogue One, a Star Wars story, we had it to where it actually showed where it led to all this and everything, and about how Rogue One got the plans and everything, and, you know, that beach planet, you know, ended up going down, that they made the ultimate sacrifice here, and it even shows you at the very end of them being on this blockade runner. Even Darth Vader's like in that dark room. Yeah, Darth Vader's in the dark room, and he activates his red saber and fights off the Leia's minions, so to speak, in that dark room. But anyway, yeah, we're not talking about that movie. We're talking about its, you know, prequel. And it's a side project of Star Wars that Disney made. But anyway, yeah, and then, of course, everything that happened at the end of Rogue One is happening right now at the start of Star Wars A New Hope from 1977, then remastered in 9704, and so on. And, yeah. Have that happening, and then all of a sudden, you know, apparently the Star Destroyer seizes the blockade runner of Leia's, and then all of a sudden, you know, the stormtroopers invade the blockade runner by breaking down the door with some sort of device, and then there's a battle between the stormtroopers and the rebels here. And, yeah, once you have that battle go down, Darth Vader comes into play. Well, the Empire obviously won this blaster battle. And then all of a sudden, C-3PO and R2-D2 are separated right now, and C-3PO is looking for R2-D2 impatiently. And then all of a sudden, Leia puts in a disc in R2-D2 to deliver the message to Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine. And C-3PO even, like, asks, "R2-D2, where are you?" And then, "At last, where have you been? They're heading in this direction. What are we going to do? We'll be sent to the smite something of Kessel, smashed into who knows what." I don't really know exactly every line because, yeah, I mean, even though I've watched it a good amount of times, I kind of I have a hard time memorizing the exact dialogue. And then all of a sudden, R2-D2 goes off again to get to the escape pod. And C-3PO even asks, wait a minute, where are you going? And then R2-D2 bleeps more. He presumably probably said an Astro Droid talked to the escape pod. We got to deliver these plans to Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's on that planet and all that. My sources detect. And next scene, you have Darth Vader here. He's interrogating Captain Antilles, or just a rebel soldier. I don't know if it was Captain Antilles for sure. But, yeah, all of a sudden, Darth Vader is asking this man he's interrogating, where are those plans you intercepted? What have you done to those plans? And then we intercepted no transmissions and all that. If this is a counselor ship, where is the ambassador? Pooh. And then Darth Vader demands that they tear the ship apart until they found the plans and that the passengers be brought in alive. And then all of a sudden you have, Princess Leia sneaking behind a couple of Imperial troops. She blasts one, and then all of a sudden the other stormtrooper stuns her, and then the Empire take Princess Leia in as prisoner, and then all of a sudden R2-D2 is going towards the escape pod, and even C-3PO even says that he's not permitted in there, but all that, but they obviously ain't even got a choice right now, and since all their rebel companions are pretty much done for, I mean, I don't even understand, C-3PO doesn't even, realize that, he's just in complete disarray and everything, and he just doesn't even realize that they're not really breaking the rules anymore, even though from C-3PO's point of view, it seems like they are, and yeah. And then all of a sudden, R2-D2 opens the escape pod, and even as C-3PO's going in there, he says, I'm going to regret this. And then all of a sudden, you have Princess Leia. She approaches Darth Vader, and then all of a sudden she, Princess Leia doesn't even know that Darth Vader is her own biological father, and, Luke figured it out, and all that. We even got the upcoming Star Wars Obi-Wan coming out, and I'll definitely have to do what I think of that later, after I watch it, maybe even for the first time. But anyway, yeah, I'm gonna go on ahead and just continue with A New Hope view, and maybe I can put in more final thoughts into this and everything. And then all of a sudden, Leia even says that the Imperial Senate will not distill for this, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, Darth Vader even informs her that several transmissions were beamed to the ship by rebel spies, which he's talking about, Rogue One. And then Darth Vader even says these exact words to Obi-Wan as he's pointing at her the same way Han Solo and several characters do. You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away. And then this other Imperial officer questions Darth Vader's authority and tells Darth Vader that if Leia's being held and that it's dangerous and that them holding Leia as prisoner, Leia could actually sell them out to the Senate and the rebellion and everything else, and Darth Vader even informs the Imperial officer that, she's the only link to finding the secret base, the rebel base, and the area where they've got the plans. And then, of course, the Imperial officer tells Darth Vader, due to how stubborn Leia is and everything, that she'll die rather than to tell him. And then, of course, gives him orders to send a distress signal and all that. And then the other Imperial officer says that they caught an escape pod, but no life forms were aboard, and that Darth Vader even sensed with the dark side of the Force, thanks to him being a Sith here, that he knows that the plans were most likely hidden in that escape pod and on one of the droids that were on board. 'board. 'Since there were no life forms, they were droids. And then, of course, Darth Vader even informs her that if Leia is being held and that it's dangerous and that he orders that stormtroopers goes down to recover the R2 unit so that way they can get the plans for the Death Star back that has the information on how to overcome the Death Star. And, yeah. Heard a couple of horns back there. And, yeah. Next, it cuts to the planet surface of Tatooine. The droids have successfully landed on the planet, and they're not hurt or nothing. And then, of course, C-3PO even says, "How did we get into this mess? I really don't know how. We seem to be made to suffer," and stuff. Yeah, he's talking about like all the even adventures they went through in the prequels, especially Episode 2, which that came out 20 years ago. And this is Happy 45. Happy 4.5, it's been around for 4.5 decades, almost 5 decades, so, yeah. So, yeah, you got 45. Yeah, 5 more years, Star Wars will be 50 years old, how about that? Anyway, yeah, on with the regular discussion, though. Okay, and then all of a sudden, R2-D2 decides to go in the opposite direction because he senses that there will be inhabitants there that can help him so that he can get that message so he can find his master, Obi-Wan Kenobi, because Leia put those plans in there and it's vital to the Alliance and even Obi-Wan himself, and all of a sudden C-3PO, disagrees with R2-D2 going in that direction, and all of a sudden then C-3PO even goes the other way. No more adventures. I'm not going that way. And then R2-D2 goes along his own way, and at this point we're led on to believe that maybe R2-D2 and C-3PO, or at least they are led on to believe, that they'll never cross paths again. And, yeah, C-3PO gets maybe just a little bit further away, and, he even, blames R2-D2 for, him tricking him to going into that way, but really it's just C-3PO blaming R2-D2 for his own problems, like he always does. And, he sees the sandcrawler, like the little thing of it, and, he even, says, "Help, please, help," and then we cut to R2-D2, who's in the, one of the canyons of Tatooine. Let's just say that. It's obviously one of the canyons of the Tatooine desert. And R2-D2 combs the canyons to see if there's, any life forms or anything that could get that distress signal that Leia sent out that she has put into his memory bank system. And then the Jawas apparently taser R2-D2, and they've already captured his companion, C-3PO. And then they grab the Astro Droid, put him on board the Sandcrawler, and R2-D2 ends up, and C-3PO, they end up finding each other, and then C-3PO even says, "R2-D2, it is you. Yeah. And then R2-D2, makes that squeak noise, and then it cuts to the next morning, and the stormtroopers are out combing the Dune Sea for R2 and 3PO, because, yeah, they really do need to find these droids because they don't want the information readouts of the battle station to find out the way to overcome the obstacle to get into the hands of the rebels. And then all of a sudden, one of the stormtroopers even says someone was in the pod, and their tracks go off in this direction, and they see a little piece of one of the robots. "Look, sir, droids," or that was probably one of the droids that was formerly on the Sandcrawler, I guess, because that was literally a piece of C-3PO or R2-D2. They wouldn't have been functioning the way they should have been. And then the Sandcrawler stops, and now they're on Owen Lars and Beru Lars's farmland. And now that Owen and Beru are now on the farm, and, still on the farm like they always have been, and they've raised Luke Skywalker, the offspring of Darth Vader and Padme. And we see Owen Lars assessing the droid lineup that's for sale, that the Jawas are going to offer them to work for their farm and their homestead. And then all of a sudden, Luke Skywalker has first appeared here, and we hear his Aunt Beru call his name, and she even tells Luke if they see the translator to make sure the droid speaks Bachi, and all of a sudden Luke even says, "We don't have much of a choice, but I'll remind them." And then Owen stumbles upon C-3PO, and seeing that he's a protocol droid, he says these exact words to him. I assume your usage is for etiquette and protocol. And then, of course, C-3PO replies, protocol, that's his primary function, that he's well-versed and everything. And then Owen even then replies, I have no need for a protocol droid. And then C-3PO even says that he's not really meant to work on farms and all that, and moisture evaporators. Hold on a minute. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, I will, where we were at. And then, Owen says to C-3PO, what I really need is a protocol droid that understands moisture evaporators. And then he even asks further, do you speak Bachi? And then C-3PO even goes on and on with his chatting and all that. Kind of like Data, C-3PO likes to throw in every detail and like little fact, like Data from Star Trek The Next Generation. He just won't shut up about information. And Owen Lars tells him to shut up and all that, and then calls for his nephew Luke, or his adopted nephew, so to speak. And then he even tells Luke, take these two over to the garage, will you? I want them cleaned up before dinner. And then Luke even replies, well, I was going to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters. And then Owen replies, you can waste time with your friends when your chores are done. Now, come on, get to it. And then And then next thing you know, Luke Skywalker looks at the droids and says, come on, to C-3PO. And apparently they decided to buy R5-D4, who was a Astro Droid-esque kind of droid. And next thing you know, he's following Luke and C-3PO to the homestead to get ready and everything. And all of a sudden, R5-D4 blows a circuit. And then even Owen looks at the Owen looks at the Jawa and asks, what are you trying to push on us? And then C-3PO recommends R2-D2 that he still work as his companion and says that he's in prime condition. And then Owen says, we'll take the blue one. And next thing you know, C-3PO even says, I've worked with R2-D2 before, but C-3PO, regrets that R2's still going to be hanging around him and all that, because C-3PO just doesn't really get along all that well with R2-D2, even though he cares a lot for him. But at the same time, they are, they're together wherever, you even got, other pairings like this in Star Wars, like Han and Chewbacca, who come later. Even in the Knights of the Old Republic, you have, you have Zalabar and Mission Veo. Yeah, I forgot the female Twi'lek. Yeah, her name is Mission. You have them. And, just kind of a thing that, a lot of these franchises have. And then, of course, you have Batman and Robin. But Batman usually works alone. I'm pretty sure, it's obvious that even C-3PO and R2-D2 would rather work alone than with each other, too. They get into those intense bickers and all that. Anyway, and then next thing you know, they're in some sort of shed area or something, and C-3PO says the oil bath is gonna feel so good on him and all that, and Luke hates the fact that he's still on that farm on Tatooine, that he'd rather be exploring the galaxy, and frankly right now I would rather be too. But and then all of a sudden, he even introduces himself, tells him his name is Luke, and then all of a sudden, even C-3PO even says, I see, Sir Luke, and then, he's knighted, he's calling him Sir Luke. And then Luke replies, no, just Luke, and then he even says, I'm C-3PO, human-cyborg relations, this is my counterpart, R2-D2, and he even doesn't even know what planet he's on, and then Luke Skywalker even tells him, if there's a bright center of the universe, you're on the planet that it's farthest from. And, Then you, after that, you, have Beru calling Luke for dinner after they stumbled across the message that Leia sent R2D2, but it wasn't even the correct, full, completed message. And then Luke, yeah, he implies to Owen that R2 is most likely stolen because he stumbled upon that recording of Leia, the first girl he's actually smitten over to, about the recording, and then says he thinks that he might have met old Ben, but then Owen even told Luke not to be hanging around him and all that, and then all of a sudden, he even tells him Obi-Wan wouldn't come looking for R2-D2 because he died about the same time as his father, and then Luke even replies, he knew my father, and then Owen says, I told you to forget it, and then he tells him that he needs him to stay on the farm and not go to the academy for another year or season, and then all of a sudden he goes, and then Beru implies to Owen that he can't stay on the moisture farm forever because his friends have already went to the academy, and Owen even says to Beru, I'll make it up to him next year, I promise. And then all of a sudden, Beru even says to Owen that Luke's not a farmer and that he's got too much of his father in him, and Owen replies, that's what I'm afraid of. Because, now realizing it, it took me years to even get this too, but yeah, that Luke and Anakin are actually quite a bit alike. And like I said, I can't wait to see a lot of the stuff that even kind of leads to some of these moments in A New Hope when that new Obi-Wan Kenobi series comes out, or the mini series. It's going to be on Disney Plus. It's a good thing I've got Disney Plus and I can watch this. Like I said, I'm probably going to do a little bit of a feedback on there. I won't give out any spoilers, but yeah, I'll tell you what I think. And yeah. You obviously have this, and the next thing you know, Luke is outside. He's gazing at the Tatooine twin suns at the sunset as it's getting dark on Tatooine on the planet. And then Luke goes to look for C-3PO and R2-D2, and then all of a sudden he turns on the lights, and then even C-3PO's back there, and then Luke's like, what are you hiding back there? Or what are you doing hiding back there? And then C-3PO replies, it wasn't my fault, sir. Please don't deactivate me. And then I told him not to go, but he kept babbling about his mission and stuff, and all of a sudden apparently R2-D2 is ran off, or is most likely been kidnapped again, and then all of a sudden, C-3PO even suggests that they should look for R2-D2 despite the fact that it's dark, and then Luke implies to C-3PO that with all the sand people out there, it's too dangerous, and that they'll have to wait till morning. And then all of a sudden Owen even says, Luke, I'm shutting the power down, and then Luke tells him he'll be there in a few minutes, and next thing you know, they go to bed, and then the next morning Owen's looking for Luke. He can't find him. He goes into the kitchen and sees Beru cooking some vegetables inside a science-fictional 1970s kitchen. Even though I wasn't around in the 70s, I've seen how a lot of customs were back then in the kitchen of this, I mean, it's obviously got, such a 1970s decade-style kitchen, and Owen goes into the kitchen and asks his wife if she had seen their nephew that morning, and Luke said that he had some things to do before he started, and they left early, and he even asks, are those two new droids with him, and she even replies, I hope so, and then Owen replies, well, he had better have those units repaired and down there by midday, or they'll be hell to pay, and hell to pay they had. That doesn't come up just yet, though. And, yeah. And then, of course, it cuts to Luke and C-3PO and Luke's speeder. I can imagine, when this came out, a lot of high school students, when they had cars, when they saw Luke's speeder, they were probably asking themselves for, wondering, man, why can't I have a speeder, a hover speeder like that instead of my 1955 Chevy? I mean, I tell you, an old-fashioned speeder like that would do me better than just a old flashy car and all that. And then we see the Tusken Raiders. One of them has their like rifle or whatever, or like sniper rifle, and is about to, shoot Luke and 3PO in the speeder, but then they tell them that they should probably get closer to him and intimidate him more, and then Luke and 3PO find R2-D2, and Luke even says, "Whoa, just where do you think you're going?" And then C-3PO tells him that Luke is his rightful owner and no more Obi-Wan Kenobi, blah, blah, blah. And then R2-D2 starts babbling more about their surroundings, and then that C-3PO even tells Luke that R2-D2 suggesting that there are many creatures coming from the southeast, and all of a sudden Luke replies, "Sand people are the worst. Come on, let's go have a look." And then all of a sudden he has like these Star Wars versions of binoculars with like numbers and that kind of space talk in a galaxy far, far away. That kind of like text font. And all of a sudden Luke is looking and he's like, "I see two banthas down there, but wait, there's sand people, all right. I can see one of them now." And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, the Tusken Raider gets right in front of Luke, and then C-3PO faints, and then all of a sudden they like knock Luke out, and all of a sudden he's passed out, and the Tusken Raiders get Luke. They line him up, and all of a sudden they're about to probably torture him, similar to what Harry and Marv were probably about to do to Kevin when he was hung on Mitch Murphy's basement door. But yeah, I will go on ahead and just not really, but yeah, you get the idea. I mean, the sand people here are about to really give Luke a bad torture punishment here. Then all of a sudden, out of the blue, woo! And then that scares them away just for a brief period of time. They'll obviously come back, though. But yeah, they obviously do that. And then Obi-Wan Kenobi goes over to Luke. We don't really know that this is Obi-Wan Kenobi because he's wearing the Jedi hood and all that. And when this first came out in 1977, like I said, we didn't know we were going to be getting prequels or sequels or none of that. We thought it was just going to be a standalone space adventure thing. And yeah, then all of a sudden he removes the hood, and then it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ben Kenobi. And he even sees R2-D2 and says, "Hello there," and then he squeaks, and then Obi-Wan Kenobi even says, "Come here, my little friend. Don't be afraid. Oh, don't worry, he'll be all right." And then Luke is awake, and he's relieved to see that Ben Kenobi's come to his rescue. And then Ben Kenobi says to Luke, Ben Kenobi says to Luke here, "Rest easy, son. You've had a busy day. You're fortunate enough to be all in one piece." And then, Luke even says, as he sees that Ben Kenobi has aided him, Ben Kenobi? Boy, am I glad to see you." And then all of a sudden, Obi-Wan Kenobi replies, "Tell me, young Luke, what brings you out this far?" And then he points out the droid, and then he's like, "I think he's searching for his former master, and I have never seen such devotion in a droid before. And he claims to be the property of an Obi-Wan Kenobi. Is he a relative of yours? Do you know who he's talking about?" And then Obi-Wan Kenobi replies, "Obi-Wan Kenobi? Excuse me, Obi-Wan. Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time. A long time." And then Luke says, "I think my uncle knows him, and he said he was dead." "Oh, he's not dead. Not yet." "Well, you know him." "Of course I know him. He's me." And then he says, "I have not gone by the name of Obi-Wan since before you were born." And then Luke says, "The droid does belong to you." And then he says, in reply, "I can't seem to ever remember owning a droid." And then very, very interesting, "I think we better get indoors. The sand people are easily startled, but will soon be back and in greater numbers." And then all of a sudden after that, they go over to C-3PO, and all of a sudden C-3PO even says that he must have taken a bad step, and then all of a sudden, Luke says, "We got to get out of here before the Sand People return." And C-3PO just thinks he's just thinking negative, and then all of a sudden they get to Obi-Wan's homestead, and then all of a sudden, Luke suggests that, his father didn't fight in the wars and all that, but he doesn't know that because Luke's aunt and uncle told him different. And then all of a sudden Obi-Wan even says, "I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father." And then Luke even replies, "I wish I'd known him." And then he tells him he was the best star pilot in the galaxy and a cunning warrior. "I understand you're a pretty good pilot yourself." And he was a good friend. Which reminds me, I have something here for you. Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough that your uncle wouldn't allow. And then all of a sudden, C-3PO even says, "I'll shut down if you don't need me for a while." And Luke says, "Yeah, go ahead." And then Luke gets up and then he says, "What is it?" And then Obi-Wan replies, "This was your father's lightsaber. It is the weapon of a Jedi Knight. Not as cheap or clumsy as a blaster. This is an elegant weapon from a more civilized day. For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice of the Old Republic, before the Dark Times, before the Empire." Then Luke kind of waves the saber around and deactivates it. And then all of a sudden, Luke asks Obi-Wan how his father died, and from Obi-Wan's point of view, because of course he's not really lying at this rate, because when the Emperor seduced Anakin to the dark side, he became Darth Vader, and Anakin was dead right there. And then he says, "A young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine before he turned to evil, helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights. He betrayed and murdered your father. Now the Jedi are all but extinct. Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force." The Emperor also, too. And then Obi-Wan explains the Force to Luke a little bit, and then he listens to Leia's message that was stored into the memory banks of R2-D2. And then all of a sudden, after they listen to the "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope" message, Obi-Wan even says, "You must learn the ways of the Force if you're to come with me to Alderaan." And Luke even says he has to get home, it's late, and then even Obi-Wan says, "I'm getting too old for this sort of thing." And then all of a sudden, Luke just says, he's got work to do and all that, and he even says that he can take Obi-Wan as far as Anchorhead, and that he can get a transport wherever it is. And even Obi-Wan says to Luke, "You must do what you feel is right." And then we cut to the Death Star. Not fully quite complete yet. And, the Imperial officers are bickering. And then all of a sudden, of course, Grand Moff Tarkin, played by Peter Cushing, who also played Van Helsing and defeated Christopher Lee, Count Dooku's Dracula. That's a classic movie, The Horror of Dracula. Anyway, he comes in, and he's Grand Moff Tarkin, a Star Wars high-ranked Imperial officer. And he even says that the Imperial Senate are of no concern and everything, and that the Jedi and all that, and the Republic, and that the remains have all been swept away. And then all of a sudden that the Imperial governors now have direct control over the territories and all that, and that fear will keep the local star systems in line and all that, and free of the battle station. And, even the Imperials, they're just acting all skeptical towards Grand Moff Tarkin and Darth Vader here. And all of a sudden, Darth Vader even says, "Don't be too proud of this physical terror you constructed. The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force." And then the Imperial officer says, "Don't frighten us with your sorcerer words, Lord Vader. That ancient religion of yours hasn't given you enough knowledge to know about the rebels' hidden fort. I find your lack of faith disturbing. And then, of course, Grand Moff Tarkin says to Vader, Vader, release him as you wish. Yeah, it's almost like Grand Moff Tarkin's even got control over Vader like the Emperor did. That's kind of another thing I like about this, because Return of the Jedi is my personal preference to Star Wars movies, but this follows as a close second. You know, I mean, of course, you know, in the Return of the Jedi, you had the Emperor under Darth Vader's command, and this one, the original A New Hope, you have Grand Moff Tarkin that way, and, well, at the same time, Darth Vader, of course, was pretty much left in charge throughout all of that, and, yeah, and then all of a sudden, you know, Grand Moff Tarkin does a little bit more of a speech, and then he says, we will then crush the rebellion with one thrift stroke. And, yeah. And then all of a sudden, Luke and Obi-Wan and the droids, all of a sudden, you know, they see a bunch of dead Jawas laying out there at the front of the sandcrawler, and then all of a sudden, you know, even Luke says, it looks like the sand people did this all right. Look, there's gaffy sticks, bantha tracks. I've never heard of anything this big before. And then Obi-Wan Kenobi says, they didn't, but we are led on to believe that they did. These tracks are side by side. Sand people always use single file to hide number killings. And then Luke replies, these are the same Jawas that sold us R2 and 3PO. And then Obi-Wan, these last tracks too accurate for sand people. Only Imperial stormtroopers are so precise. And then Luke realizes that they've been brought to Owen and Beru's homestead, which is now in ruins. Owen and Beru are killed because the stormtroopers killed and set their homestead on fire because they refused to give them any information about Luke and the droids. And meanwhile on the Death Star, Darth Vader and 2 Imperial men come into Leia's holding cell, and they have a mind probe. This thing obviously doesn't really hurt you or kill you, but it makes you under the impression that you're dying and all that, like a drug would or all that. Like if you were to get high and all that, you could be really, really happy on top of the world, or you could see demons and all that, depending on what it is you do. But anyway, that's the kind of effect the mind probe has. And despite this, Leia still doesn't give Darth Vader any information about the plans on how to overcome the destructive weapon, the Death Star. And next thing you know, Luke returns to Obi-Wan and the droids. The droids are cremating the Jawas in a fire. And then all of a sudden, Obi-Wan even says that there's nothing he could have done and that the droids would now be in the hands of the Empire. And then Luke decides he's officially made his decision to become a Jedi Knight and learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like his dad. And then Obi-Wan and Luke, they're all on his speeder, and then they look down from a cliff at Mos Eisley, and Obi-Wan says this quote, Mos Eisley Spaceport. Mos Eisley Spaceport. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious. And, yeah. Have that out of the way, and, next thing you know, a stormtrooper who's searching the droids slows him down, and then he asks, how long have you had these droids? And Luke, lies, about 3 or 4 seasons, and then Obi-Wan uses his Jedi magic on the stormtrooper who's interrogating him. And then, let me see your identification, and then he does his magic. You don't need to see his identification. And then the stormtrooper replies back, we don't need to see his identification. Then he does it again. These aren't the droids you're looking for. These aren't the droids we're looking for. He can go about his business. You can go about your business. Move along. Move along, move along. And then Luke takes off on his speeder. They end up at the cantina, and then C-3PO says the words, I can't abide those Jawas, disgusting creatures. And then Luke says, go on. And then he even says to Obi-Wan, I don't understand how we got past those troops. I thought we were dead. And then Obi-Wan replies to Luke, the Force can have a strong influence on the weak-minded. Then Luke gazes at the cantina entrance and even says, "You really think we're going to find a pilot here that can take us all around?" And then Obi-Wan says, "Well, most of the good freighter pilots can be found here, only watch your step. This place can be a little rough." And then they go in and we hear cantina music. Yeah, which is actually a part of the score too at the same time. They walk into the cantina and they see so many alien races just drinking and gambling and all that. And then C-3PO's about to follow them, and then the bartender says, "Hey, we don't serve their kind here." And then Luke asks, questions that, and then he's like, "Your droid, they're going to have to wait outside. We don't want them here." And then Luke says, "You're going to have to wait out by the speeder. We don't want to get in trouble." And then C-3PO replies, "I heartily agree with you, sir." And then, even like when you said, that part, that particular part I just mentioned, you see like these two twins in green spandex, but they have like a little blue on the chest area of the spandex suits they're wearing. I remember years ago, like when Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace was out in theaters, like just about a month before it came out in the library book club, I purchased a essential guide to characters that had a lot of the characters from Star Wars from the expanded universe, even minor characters from these movies and the trilogy were mentioned. It was such a great book. I regret that I even gave it away and all that. I really should have kept it. It would have been worth some money, and it'd be still pretty cool looking up now, but there is Wikipedia and sources like that, so not really that much of a big deal, but still. Alright, I'm back. And the next thing you know, Ponda Baba, an alien, that has a bizarre-looking mouth and all that. He makes some gibberish at Luke. I'm not even sure if it's even alien native tongue that he was speaking, or if that race just speaks that stuff. And then apparently his leader of his duo taps Luke on the shoulder, and then he appears. It's none other than Dr. Evison. Dr. Cornelius Evison is apparently this guy's name, according to most sources. Even though they've never mentioned him by name, they've only made 2 appearances, one in this A New Hope movie, and of course in Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, which is the prequel former of, It was, of course, in the Star Wars Disney canon. The one I'm talking about right now is the predecessor of Rogue One, A Star Wars Story in chronological order, but not in terms of being released, obviously. And Dr. Evison says to Luke he doesn't like you and that we're wanted men. I have the death sentence on 12 systems, and Luke informs him that he'll be careful, and Dr. Evison's trying to take away his hope of his journey becoming a Jedi, and Obi-Wan contradicts that, and all of a sudden he attacks Luke and by throwing him down, and then Obi-Wan chops off Dr. Evison's hand for, even without rhyme or reason, doing all that shit to him. And then, even though they said no blasters, it's still, but Dr. Evison pulled out his out first, and Obi-Wan came to a conclusion there to end that. He helps Luke up, and then apparently Chewbacca has already been talking to Obi-Wan. And as he tells Luke, Chewbacca here, first made on a ship that might suit us. And then all of a sudden, you cuts back to the droid. C-3PO says, I don't like the look of this, because he sees the Imperial troops are getting closer and everything. And then Obi-Wan and Luke meet with Han and Chewbacca. Han Solo comes in to play, and his first quote words in this appearance of him, he says, Han Solo, I'm captain of the Millennium Falcon. Chewie here tells me that you're looking for a passage to the Alderaan system, and Obi-Wan replies, yes, but if it's a fast ship. And then Han replies, fast ship? You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon? It's the ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs and stuff. And then he even asks, what's the cargo? And then Obi-Wan replies, Myself, the boy, 2 droids, and no questions asked. Oh, is this some kind of local trouble? And then Obi-Wan says, let's just say we want to avoid any Imperial entanglements. Then even Han says, well, that's going to cost you something extra. 10,000 in advance. And then Obi-Wan says, right now we could pay you 2,000. 15 extra when we reach Alderaan. And Han's in for that because he knows he's going to be getting the bling 17,000 to pay off Jabba the Hutt, or some of the money he owes him. And then all of a sudden, Han tells them, let's meet back at Docking Bay 94. And they know that, and then they all go their separate ways until they meet back at the Docking Bay 94. And Han runs into Greedo, a bounty hunter who's working for Jabba the Hutt, who Han happens to owe money to. And then Greedo says in his native tongue, going somewhere solo? And then Han replies, yes, Greedo, I was just going to see your boss. Tell Jabba that I got the money. And he even tells him it's too late, and that Jabba's put a price on your head. Every bounty hunter in the galaxy is going to be looking for you. And you're lucky I found you first. And then he says, but this time I've got the money. And then he's like, why don't you give it to me? I might forget that I found you. I don't have it with me. And then Jabba's through with you. And he's like, he has no patience for smugglers that leave their stuff on cargo of the Imperial cruiser and all that. Something like that. And then Han replies with, even I get bored at sometimes. Do you think I have had a choice and stuff? And all of a sudden, you can tell Jabba that he can take your ship. And he's like, over my dead body. That's the idea. I've been looking for this a long time, he says in his native tongue. And there are like 2 different versions to this particular scene right here. There's in the original versions, up until like the 95 release, before they officially released the special editions, Han shoots right away. He doesn't even give Greedo the chance to shoot at all. He was already locked and loaded, boom, and Greedo's already right there. But then when the 97 version came out, it's no longer Han shot first anymore. Greedo shoots first this time. Instead of, after he says, I'll bet you have, he lets Greedo take the shot. He backs away like that, and then boom. It's like, it's like Han didn't shoot first this time, and I prefer Han shot first over that any day. I mean, that just kind of doesn't really seem like Han Solo. See, Han Solo is very bold. He knows what he wants, and he's very strong-willed, and for him to do that just kind of makes him look like he cowered it out a little bit. For him to already to know and be ready for it and to shoot first, that's more Han's nature right there. That's why I prefer the original unspecialized edition versions over the special editions, because the special editions, they no longer say that Han shot first, that Greedo made the first shot, and that he did that. Seriously, you want Han Solo to be learned like that? Goodness. It's like, I didn't mind some of the other special edition effects, and some of the ads were pretty interesting, but as for Han not shooting first, that's one of the biggest ones I disagree with. Oh, boy. As you can see, I've got my Star Wars poster back there. And I'm wearing my Star Wars 1977 shirt just for this review. Whenever I do a Star Wars review, I'll remember to wear my Star Wars t-shirts when I'm reviewing them, just to kind of keep the spirit in there. And maybe I'll even, because I love that. That poster is one of my most valuable things. And I've got a Return of the Jedi poster over there on the other side of the room. Maybe I'll move the camera over there and have that in display when I review Return of the Jedi. Anyway, yeah. Enough procrastinating or planning ahead. On with the topic at hand. And then all of a sudden, C-3PO and R2-D2 are trying to run away from the Empire. And then, C-3PO even says to R2-D2, I would have much rather gone with Master Luke than to stay here with you and stuff. And this must be your fault. Yeah, C-3PO blames R2-D2 for everything that happens around them and all that. I mean, goodness, he had to have that out there. C-3PO, it's like he just overlooks the fact that the rebellion is too vulnerable unless they have the plans and that they're delivered to the rebel officials. And then you have an Imperial spy looking for Luke and Obi-Wan and the droids, and next thing you know, but then maybe I'll go on ahead, even though I prefer the originals, I'll still talk about this new special edition scene where Jabba the Hutt is first introduced. In the originals, he didn't come until Return of the Jedi. He was mentioned only. The whole idea of this special edition scene is that it was originally done in the, Jabba the Hutt was supposed to be a human being who was overweight and kind of like a gangster-like, instead of like a race called a Hutt. And then next thing, but they decided to make him a Hutt, and this time they CGI'd him to look like the alien and everything. And and then Han Solo comes back as Jabba the Hutt's standing right, with his bounty hunter henchmen. They're standing right there in front of the Millennium Falcon. He even says, "Come out of there, Solo." And then Han comes into play. "Right here, Jabba. Didn't think I was gonna run, did ya? Han, my boy, you disappoint me," and stuff, and all of that. And he even tells him, "You promised you'd pay me back and everything." And then he tells him, "When I take this crew of mine, when I come back here, I'll pay you back plus a little extra." And then all of a sudden he even says, "For an extra 20, 15, Jabba, don't push it." And then says in his own Hutt language, "Come on." And we even see Boba Fett in the specialized edition of A New Hope. He didn't come until Empire. And yeah, you had that out of the way, and thanks to the book of Boba Fett actually became more of a good guy over bad, like he was seen in all those others. And yeah, he that's out of the way. Now that it's out of the way, Luke and Obi-Wan meet up with Han, and they get on board, and then the stormtroopers even ask the Imperial spy which way, who apparently John Wayne voiced, and then, "Stop that shit, blast them." And then the Millennium Falcon takes off away from Tatooine. They are now in space. Even the stormtroopers looked up and sees that the droids and Luke and Obi-Wan got away on the ship. And now they've probably already sent a transmission to their communications on board the Star Destroyer. And now the Imperial fighters are now onto them. Now that they left Tatooine. It didn't take them no time at all to figure it out, and what they were up to. And then next thing you know, Luke's already panicking a little bit and all that, but at the same time, he's having fun. Luke's thinking to himself, "Man, finally the day has come where I have left Tatooine, the boring planet of my life. But I'm off to a bumpy start here." And, yeah, and then next thing you know, meanwhile on the Death Star, Darth Vader and Grand Moff Tarkin are more talking to Leia here. And, Tarkin blows up Alderaan with the Death Star, even though Princess Leia wasn't really lying about the Rebel base being on Tatooine. It was there, but they relocated it. But since Alderaan was right there next to the Death Star, he's thinking, I think that's the planet we should test this thing on instead of Tatooine, because it wouldn't really make a very good demonstration. And the Death Star blows up the rock. It's creamed. And then Han Solo even comes into play, after Obi-Wan sensed that Alderaan was destroyed, but they still need to continue on with the mission at hand. And then all of a sudden, Han Solo comes in through the cockpit hallway and says, "Well, you can forget your troubles with those Imperial slugs. I told you I'd outrun them. And don't everybody thank me at once." Yeah, you see how cocky and arrogant Han Solo is. And he even says, "We should be at Alderaan at about 200 hours. And R2-D2 and Chewbacca are playing a game of alien chess or whatever." And all of a sudden, Chewbacca even loses his temper, because then C-3PO even tells him he made a fair move, and screaming about it ain't gonna help. And then Han even tells C-3PO it's not wise to upset a Wookiee. And then C-3PO even says, but sir, nobody worries about upsetting a droid. And then he's like, well, that's because droids don't pull people's arms out of their sockets when they lose. You know, Wookiees are known to do that. And then, of course, C-3PO says to R2, let the Wookiee win. And then more training between Obi-Wan and Luke, and then they get a detection signal. From here, they find more Imperial troops, and then next thing you know, they need to stop that fighter before it gets to the Death Star, and Luke even says he's heading for that small moon, and then all of a sudden, Obi-Wan says, that's no moon, it's a space station. And then Han, of course, gets arrogant, says it's too big to be a space station. And Luke even says, I got a bad feeling about this, turn the ship around. I think you're right. Chewie, lock in the auxiliary power. Chewie, I said lock in the auxiliary power. Why are we still moving towards it? We're caught in a tractor beam that's pulling us in, but they're not going to get me without a fight. You can't win, but there are alternatives to fighting. Stuff. Yeah, and then next thing you know, they have to hide in those compartments, because, yeah, and then, of course, the Imperial officer is under the impression that the passengers and everybody on board jettisoned as they were being brought into the for the tractor beam and the Death Star, and all of a sudden, you know, or actually, no, that he was saying that there's no one on board, sir. According to the log, the crew abandoned ship right after takeoff. Yeah, and stuff. And did they find any droids? No, sir. If they were any on board, then they must have also jettisoned. And then Darth Vader demands that they check every part of the ship, except for those hidden compartments. And then, like, even Han said, you know, I use these for smuggling. I never thought I'd be smuggling myself in these. And this is ridiculous. Even if I could take off, I couldn't get past the tractor beam. And then Obi-Wan even says, leave that to me. And then Han replies, you know, I knew you were going to say that, because he called him a fool. And then Obi-Wan replies, who's the more foolish? The fool or the fool who follows him? Like Chewbacca there. And then they knock out a couple of stormtroopers, steal their armor and helmets. And then all of a sudden, you know, the Imperial officer says, TK-421, why are you not at your post? TK-421, do you copy? And then take over. We have a bad transmitter. I'll see what I can do here. And then, and they're Obi-Wan Kenobi's following them and all that, and Chewbacca is he's there, and then all of a sudden, you know, they figure out how to shut down the tractor beam, and then of course Luke, Han, and Chewbacca decide to go after and rescue Princess Leia out of the holding cell. Chewbacca has to pretend to be a prisoner being held by Luke and Han, who are disguised as stormtroopers here, so they don't draw or attract attention. And, Luke even says, I can't see a thing in this helmet and everything. Although those helmets, ironically, do have, like, a little ability to make them brighter and all that, to see for that visor. And Luke not being Imperial material and not being a part of the Empire, he didn't know how to work it. So, they get on board the elevator, and Obi-Wan's still trying to make his way to the tractor beam. And then Darth Vader even says, he's here. Grand Moff Tarkin replies, Obi-Wan Kenobi, what makes you think so? A tremor in the Force. The last time I felt it was in the presence of my old master. Surely he must be dead by now. Don't underestimate the Force. The Jedi are extinct. You, my friend, all that's left of their religion. you, my friend, is all that's left of their religion. And then, of course, you know, Luke, Han, and Leia have already, Luke, Han, and Chewbacca have already rescued Princess Leia here by this time. Yeah, I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you, blah. And, then, you know, they get caught in a trash compactor, you know, because they were trying to outsmart the stormtroopers, but little did they know. Well, actually, Han already knew that they were going to probably do something, and that they were going to try to make the trash compactor close in on them, smash them like a pancake. But they were able to overcome that by contacting C-3PO, and they shut down all the garbage dispatches on the detention level in the nick of time that canceled out the kill. So, yeah, since the kill was offset, we now go back to Obi-Wan Kenobi, who shuts down the tractor beam. Han and Chewbacca, all of a sudden, you know, they get into their mess. And Luke and Leia inadvertently get themselves into a mess. And Obi-Wan Kenobi finally finds his old pupil, Darth Vader, right here. Darth Vader already had his lightsaber activated too by this time. I tell you, if I didn't know Darth Vader that well and he wasn't my pupil, I'd be intimidated as shit by just him standing there with his lightsaber thinking he's going to throw it at me just any millisecond here. But, yeah. He, Darth Vader, you know, quotes, "I've been waiting for you, Obi-Wan. We meet again at last. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master." And then Obi-Wan replies with his saber now active, "Only a master of evil, Darth." And then lightsaber duel initiates. It's not nearly as good as their battle on Mustafar, and it's a lot more short. Yeah, it's not really an epic battle at all. But it is the first lightsaber duel you'll see in the franchise, since this is the first ever Star Wars movie to ever come into existence. And then all of a sudden, Darth Vader replies, "Your powers are weak, old man." And then Obi-Wan replies, "You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you could possibly imagine." And then they duel for a little bit, and apparently the rest of the team makes it back to the Falcon, while Obi-Wan Kenobi is still dueling his former pupil. Luke sees it happening, but even Luke at this time doesn't know that Darth Vader is his biological father. He doesn't learn that until the predecessor, Empire Strikes Back. And then all of a sudden, you know, Darth Vader, you know, he strikes Obi-Wan down, and Luke is now feeling hopeless. He feels he has no other way or path to becoming a Jedi and all that, but he still decides to stick around the Rebel forces and be a Rebel commander since he's got piloting skills and everything. And yeah, apparently thanks to Obi-Wan Kenobi, they shut the tractor beam down, and they escape the Death Star, only for more Imperial fighters to fight them. And apparently they get to the Yavin Rebel base. Yeah, and when they get to Yavin 4, they have that briefing, assembly, and all of a sudden, you know, they go out the briefing and going over the strategies on how to go about destroying the ultimate Imperial weapon, the Death Star. And this is where we first see Wedge Antilles without his helmet right now, and he even says, "That's impossible, even for a computer." And then Luke replies to Wedge, "It's not impossible. I used to bullseye womp rats in my 316 back home," and stuff. And then General Jan Dodonna replies, "Man your ships and may the Force be with you." Yeah, so you see, even the Rebellion believes in the Force too here. And then next thing you know, Han Solo decides to bail. He doesn't want anything to do with the Alliance. He feels he's, you know, he holds no value to him whatsoever, even though Leia and the rest of the team seems to think he's a great leader and everything, and that he's capable of it. But, you know, kind of like, you know, Deadshot in the Suicide Squad. You know, Deadshot never really thought he was that good of a leader and thought he held no value to the Suicide Squad towards Amanda Waller and all that. But, yeah, and that's kind of the way Han is towards the Rebels. And then all of a sudden, you know, Luke even says, "So you got your reward and now you're just going to leave?" "Yeah, I've got debts to pay off. Why don't you come with us? We could use you." And then all of a sudden, all of a sudden, Han's even like, and besides, going up against that space station ain't my idea of courage. It's more like suicide. Well, then take care of yourself, Han. I guess that's what you're best at, isn't it? And stuff. And yeah, after that has taken place, we go to the final battle. Well, actually, yeah. All of a sudden, Luke even finds Leia, the woman of his dreams, and apparently he misses Obi-Wan so badly and feels bad that his best friend is bailing on him and all that. He feels like, I'm on my own now. There's no hope for me. My life is going to end. Although Leia gives him another kiss for good luck, so to speak. After all, Leia did say that somehow she always knew Luke was her brother, and probably even at this time she knew it too. It's Han who she's head over heels over. But, yeah. All of a sudden, they start. Now, in the special edition version, this was excluded from the originals, but in the special edition, we see another new canon first appearance of Biggs. Because apparently Luke and Biggs grew up together on Tatooine, in that farm and all that, and they were longtime buds and everything. Probably even went to high school together, too. By the way, they really know each other. And, yeah, and then you have the leader of Rogue Squadron giving them more orders and everything, saying, this is no time for reunion and everything. We got more important things to worry about, that kind of thing. And, Luke even says to Biggs, hey, I told you I'd make it someday. They probably used to always argue, like Biggs, so as arrogant and egotistical as he looked, like when they're like even some of those deleted scenes, he kind of like it even looked like he was kind of like Luke's rival to some extent rather than best friend at times. But those are always the most exciting unions. So, yeah, and then the Death Star battle starts here. Hold on a minute. Like I said, yeah, you can probably see my Star Wars poster more now that I turned the lights on. It's getting to be evening here. It's, today is May 25th after all. Like I said, this marks 45 years after the release of this movie. It's already going on 5 decades. Boy, it's hard to believe. But as I was saying, the Death Star battle starts here, and then all of a sudden, all wings report in, and then everything, and even Luke, Red 5's standing by and everything, and then the leader of Rogue Squadron says, lock your ships in attack position, and then the Death Star battle starts right here. And then all of a sudden, there so much, goes on here. Even Porkins, played by William Hookins, who even played Lieutenant Eckhart in Batman 1989. Not to mention how Billy D. Williams was Harvey Dent pre-Two-Face in Batman 89, but I'm not going to go all that much there yet. But yeah, we got this going on right here. And, so many X-Wing fighters lost their lives doing everything they can to overcome this powerful weapon. And we're left with so many, and yeah, even Biggs ends up getting blown into space dust here. And then just the only ones survived was Luke and Wedge Antilles. And Obi-Wan even tells him to use the Force and to turn off his targeting computer. He even says, Luke, trust me, and then, he ends up losing R2-D2, and then he shoots in the torpedoes from the X-Wing fighter, and then, even like earlier before this, even Grand Moff Tarkin's he sees that victory is finally at the hands for the Empire, and that this doesn't have to go on anymore. There's going to be more control and order in the galaxy. And then the one guy even says, they've analyzed your attacks, sir, and there is a danger. Shall I have your ship standing by? And then Grand Moff Tarkin replies, evacuate at our moment of triumph? I do believe you underestimate their chances. And stuff. And even leading to this, and apparently Grand Moff Tarkin got too overconfident at this, not worrying at all that it was going to come to this, and Luke fired, apparently Darth Vader even senses kind of right now that this could be his son right here. The Force is strong with this one. And then as he's about to, at first Han sneaks up behind Darth Vader and knocks him out of the way, and you're all clear, kid, now let's blow this thing and go home. And then Luke fires those torpedoes into the Death Star. And then, of course, stand by, and Grand Moff Tarkin's just like that, you know. I mean, he's thinking that it may not have been effective, that they were going to get lucky, but then just... And then, of course, Han replies, "Great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million." Obi-Wan's voice, "Remember, the Force will be with you, always." And then they know that R2 is going to be fixed. They have an Imperial Celebration. And you see our heroes, Luke, Han, and Chewbacca. They're brought to the... And they have an Imperial Celebration. Leia gives Luke and Han a medal, but Chewbacca didn't get one. And this scene has actually influenced some other stuff in the media, like at the end of an episode of Family Guy, at the end of Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, The Adventure Begins, which was a direct-to-video full-length feature, and the first pilot episode of the Buzz Lightyear of Star Command Commander, you know, the 2D series that aired on ABC Saturday mornings back in the day. And Tim Allen, of course, very much like Toy Story. In Toy Story 2, Tim Allen reprised the role in the direct-to-video version, but the original version that aired on TV. And all the other episodes of the series was voiced by the guy that voiced the Little Green Men, Patrick Warburton. He voiced Buzz Lightyear and all those, and we even have the upcoming Lightyear. Chris Evans going to be the third person to voice Buzz. Yeah, because, you know, even like when these movies first came out, Toy Story was actually a pretty big thing, seeing as the fact that it was first released to VHS just a couple months before they specialized edition, the original trilogy and all this. And even Buzz Lightyear kind of reminds you something of, he's kind of relatable to Luke Skywalker, and even Emperor Zurg being slightly influenced off of Darth Vader. But it had a lot of its original material, and, you know, even when it came to Buzz Lightyear of Star Command and even seeing all these Space Rangers, they remind you a lot of Starfleet officers in Star Trek. The only difference is the Space Rangers and Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, or the Space Rangers of Star Command, unlike the Starfleet officers of the United Federation of Planets, they're more warriors. They're bigger warriors than they are, because you know, with Star Trek, you're talking exploration and everything, but enough comparing Buzz Lightyear of Star Command to Star Trek. This review is supposed to be about Star Wars. Yeah, the Imperial Celebration goes on, and R2-D2 squeaks. It's over. And yeah, but Star Wars, like I was saying, it's a very widened franchise. When this came out back in 1977, people probably weren't expecting sequels. They weren't expecting even the prequels or anything. They were thinking it was going to be a standalone movie and that there wouldn't be anything else. But, you know, it's good to know that it was a trilogy for a while. I mean, I even got the original Star Wars trilogy on VHS. In fact, I got two, you know, like I said, I've got like 2 different versions of the unspecialized editions, even including the unspecialized actual more recent edition that's on DVD. I bought it from a convention years ago. And yeah, but then you of course got the special editions. I've actually got the 2011 versions of Star Wars on Blu-ray. They were actually in a Blu-ray DVD combo pack. Yeah, and that of course unfortunately didn't have Han Shot First in it though. And, you know, just seeing Star Wars, and it's like, you know, it's a space fairy tale, you know, there's Jedi Knights, kind of like actual Knights of the Round, you know, kind of like King Arthur and all that, or even like Robin Hood and his merry men, you know. I mean, these Star Wars movies kind of go hand in hand with all those fairy tales. I guess you could say that it's not really such a surprise that Disney bought Star Wars after George Lucas kind of was feeling so overwhelmed by the criticism of his prequels. He just went on ahead and gave it all to Disney so that they'd stop, and now people want Lucas back. It's amazing. But George Lucas has a very creative mindset, too, and how he was able to bring all this space adventure to life and make it look so real and alive. And it even motivated him to making other stuff like Indiana Jones, Willow. The first mention was actually a trilogy, just like Star Wars was, although it's not a trilogy anymore. Neither is Star Wars now that it's got prequels and everything too. Even miniseries on Disney Plus. And yeah, and they even got, the same guy that played Han Solo, Harrison Ford, they get him to play Indiana Jones too. Which, in my opinion, conspiracy theory, I like to think that Han Solo and Indiana Jones are in fact the same. They're not really any separate entity. It's like Indiana Jones are just the dreams of Han Solo. Like, you have Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark, which came out in 1981, a year after Empire. Perhaps this is Han Solo dreaming as he's frozen in carbonite. And, then, of course, you had the Temple of Doom, which came out just a year after Return of the Jedi. Han's happily married with Leia. He's adopted Ewoks with her and all that, but he, the whole time, had a secret holosuite on his Millennium Falcon. To this day, he's not told a soul in a galaxy far, far away of its whereabouts, of its usage, or even that it exists. Han Solo, since he's very strong-willed and mysterious and all that, and I like to believe that Han's got a lot of secrets about him that he would never tell anybody, not even Leia or Luke or anybody he trusts that much. And when we watch Indiana Jones, like I said, I like to kind of think that these are like the imaginary adventures of Han and his little holosuite. Man, my bad hair, they messing up on me again. But yeah, I like to think that very much. And it's also great that they even made other stuff later of Star Wars, like action figures, toys, video games, expanded universe. There's so much expansion to this franchise that it's been ongoing ever since this movie came out back in 1977, 10 years before I even existed. I tell you, if I ever were to time travel, it would be worth going back into 1977 and like going to a movie theater as a time traveler and just kind of dressing, like most of them would have back then, and would have went into a movie theater and to see this for the true first time on the big screen. That would be amazing. Because, yeah, this was a very big thing when it was first released. According to online sources and everything. Even my mom got to see it in the theater, too, when she graduated high school. It was just amazing how... And, even the 60s looked pretty groovy, too. It'd be cool to try time travel to the 60s. I never existed there. Think about how much simpler it was back then, too. And, yeah. I am, absolutely, great that I've, witnessed these movies in my life and that they're a big part of me and that I really have passion for this series. And, yeah, it's also pretty cool to know that, now that Disney's bought them out, they're, like, doing a lot more expansion with them, even compared to George Lucas and the expanded universe and all that. They even made the Thrawn Trilogy, which was a set of 3 series of Star Wars, kind of like the original trilogy is, and the prequels. And, George Lucas was originally going to make these into movies, but Han Solo said that he didn't want to do it, and they didn't feel like recasting Han, so it was shelved. The special editions officially came into play. Yep, and just a good thing to know, though, that the expanded universe isn't 100% non-canon anymore, because of course they did bring Thrawn back and gave him a new canon story. Although, in the original Legends canon, even during the original trilogy days, Grand Admiral Thrawn wasn't even a Grand Admiral yet. He was a lower ranked Imperial officer. But Grand Admiral Thrawn pretty much took control after the Emperor was gone, which was another really good thing, though, that happened in those books, and I have to give him some more reads later. And you have like a lot of video games and all that, which is also incredible. But yeah, I guess that will pretty much conclude it for this review of Star Wars: A New Hope from 1977. If you decided to watch this video, I hope you enjoyed. I apologize that I kind of stuttered through some of it and all that. I mean, I've got depression and I've got autism, so sometimes doing this can be a little bit nerve-wracking for me sometimes. But at the same time, I really enjoy it because there's nothing better I like doing than speaking my mind, especially through the internet still. It's how I roll. Anyway, y'all have a nice time.